Welcome to another episode of The Rundown with A and B. Of course, I'm A.
And of course, I'm B.
And our first story, very sad to report. A 17-year-old Alabama girl was shot and killed at her high school this past week. Now, she was a high school senior. Her name was Cortland Arrington with a 3.5 GPA and was also a certified nursing assistant. So definitely had a promising future for sure. And a 17-year-old male has been charged in the incident with manslaughter. Now, this was an accidental death because he brought the gun to school that week because he was robbed earlier in the week. So definitely an accidental death. And the crazy part about this story is they have metal detectors in the school. But for some reason, on that day, they decided not to use the metal detectors. Very interesting. And it definitely seems like this could be avoided had they used the metal detectors. So you have some news about the gun reform situation in Florida, right?
I do, and so I believe that with what you just said about the metal detector situation with this, which we send our condolences to her family, that is, a really horrific story. This news I have, it kind of seems, in my personal opinion, a bit problematic because, I should just start the news I have, huh? So what happened is that on Monday, Florida Senate passed that teachers will be able to carry. Yes, so there are some stipulations which I think that we should probably get into, of course. So one of the stipulations is that this is not a case where all teachers can carry. That's not what Florida has intended to do. Specific teachers, and this seemed a little odd to me when I was reading the documentation for it. I noted that it said that teachers that are like solely working in the classroom, they're not, coaches or anything extracurricular, they might not be able to undergo the program that would certify them. So Florida is going to have their teachers go through, specific classes with law enforcement to make sure that they know how to handle the guns properly and just make sure that the guns are not in the hands of just any teacher. But they are, I believe, targeting teachers that have, I guess, more of a prominent presence, I would say, in the school. So you're not just teaching math class, you may teach math class and be a coach or whatever the case may be. They're targeting that, which I thought was interesting. I think it would be really cool to see what the idea is behind that. I personally don't see a difference if you coach and you teach. I feel like in a crisis, you need just representation and people to protect, but that's just me. I'm not, part of Florida Senate. Another thing is that they're also spending, so the funds aren't strictly just for go towards guns, and the reform is just not for that. They also want to make sure that they target putting funds towards bettering their mental health programming. And they want to make sure that they have stronger communication with law enforcement and special agencies, as well as residents that are interested in task force, which is something that's interesting because a lot of citizens in, array of cities have started talking about task force, and they started talking about measures that they can take. So Ohio, as a state, their stance is that it's up to school boards whether teachers carry or not. And it's been that way for a while, which I think is interesting. So when you come to a situation like this, I wonder if we're, just to be honest, jumping the gun, no pun intended though, with this gun reform, because it's, in this situation, you had it where it wasn't a mass shooting, but you have an innocent victim, dying at the hand of another student that was an accident, and it all could have been prevented if the metal detector was on. What do you think about that? I wonder if having guns and allowing teachers to have guns, if that's too far of a reach when we can't even make sure our metal detectors are working.
So step number one, plug in the metal detectors. Like, use it every day.
I'm not understanding.
I still don't understand that. But in terms of arming teachers, I'm not in favor of that per se, because I think there's just so many things that could go wrong.
Yes.
And obviously we've seen numerous documented cases where we can't trust police officers who have been sworn to serve and protect the community with guns, but now we're going to empower teachers and give them a gun. So will the teacher use a gun to break up a fight, or can a substitute have access to the gun if the teacher isn't there? Like, there's just a lot of different things that could, I would say, go wrong for sure. And I think the metal detector is more of a proactive measure, because I feel if everyone goes through a metal detector coming through the building, that will be easier and probably a cheaper route for taxpayers in Florida as well. But with that being said, we always hear about some crazy stuff happening in Florida. So I'm not surprised by this story, and I can sort of understand why they would want to arm teachers. But again, I think it's a bad thing to arm them, and hopefully the nation and other states don't follow Florida in Florida taking the lead. But definitely feel like arming teachers isn't the way to go. What about you?
I think I agree with a lot of the statements that you made. I think that there is a concern it's always, to me personally speaking, a concern of just who has the gun, who is behind the trigger.
Right.
You know, because once a gun is placed in somebody's hand, you cannot dictate the outcome. So I think that that is something to consider. So I do commend Florida for having some stipulations in terms of who will be able to carry, but according to what's already been released, I'm not sure if I personally agree with the stipulations because, like I said again, I don't know if it really makes a difference personally if you just teach a math class or if you teach 3 classes in the school. I don't know what that means in terms of a crisis. I also, another concern of mine would be, or not so much of a concern, but I think it'd be interesting to see what other states do with this because, I mean, Florida is not the first that has had, you know, a shooting of this sort. And so I think as a whole, school boards are starting to take a deeper look into things and they're starting to see that, okay, this is a trend that's going on. What are we going to do to stop it? So I wonder what's going to happen in terms of other schools and other districts and states. I wonder if they're going to adopt this or not. But in the meantime, I feel like let's make sure that our metal detectors are on. Let's really tighten up the precautions that we already have.
Absolutely.
I think that that's something that all schools should be looking at is whatever they have in place, are we doing that to the best of our abilities?
And speaking of schools, here in Bowling Green State University a former employee, was indicted for tampering with records.
Oh.
Here's the details. Gail Houts was charged with 2 theft counts, amounts ranging from $1,000 to $7,500 and even more in some instances, dating back to January of 2016. But you're probably wondering, A, B, why should I care? Here's why you should care. Funny you should ask. A statement released by BGSU says these charges arise out of irregularities BGSU discovered in how Houts processed financial aid.
Might want to run that back and let them know.
I'm gonna read it one more time just so you can click it. It went over some of your hits. Okay. These charges arise out of irregularities BGSU discovered in how Houts processed financial aid.
Ridiculous.
So she's basically messing with people's refund checks.
And cashing out.
Which is wild because you always hear the horror stories about people fighting with financial aid, basically saying they want to square up or pull up on financial aid because they're messing with their money. Oftentimes you think, okay, it can't be like that serious. But here we have a documented incident in which the university is saying, yes, this former employee of ours did basically mess up and screwed up people's financial aid. What do you think?
I think that, to be honest with you, I'm surprised that it's not more information already out about it, or that this headline, I don't think it's probably been talked about as much as it should be, especially since it's local and it's the university. I just think that that is a really big deal. Like, this is people's financial aid. People already, you know, go into so much debt to receive education. So I'm a little bit disappointed that I feel like the university, personally speaking, just left the students kind of hanging. Like, if you read about it, you read about it. I mean, like, it was nothing in my email, no university email, nothing sent out. I just happened to stumble upon this absolutely unacceptable
on the Sentinel Tribune's website. So that's crazy that we weren't informed as students. But hopefully there'll be more transparency going forward. Obviously, we understand it's an ongoing investigation, so the university can't really comment on it right now. But hopefully, moving forward, we would appreciate some transparency from the university about specifically what happened and what will be different moving forward regarding university employees for sure.
Agreed. Or even, like you said, I agree that we do have to respect the processes in terms of, because it's an investigation. But I hope that moving forward, they'll just release a statement even telling you guys, you know, what they plan to do moving forward with that. You know, I just feel like the university is pretty good about sending emails about other things. So hopefully the students get some type of relief regarding this and they don't have to just pick up the newspaper and find out more details as it's unfolding. That's not cool.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for the rundown this week with A and B. Make sure you tune in next week.